Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you for the follow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How is everyone doing today? I hope you're all doing very, very well. We have some stuff picked out today to do readings for October. Just a few little stories. Thank you, Zin Ogre. Then we have Morbid Hay Bale, Xizaa. Don't know how any clue how to pronounce that. And Valen, good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy October. Yep, shame, Stinky. Thank you for the redeem for Sniffa. How's everyone doing today? Did you all sleep okay? And Carmia, thank you so much for the sub. I'd also like to thank Dwarf for getting first, Wifey for getting third, and Kimizu, thank you for getting second. Thank you. Thank you. Sasona, I appreciate the compliment. Yes, somewhere around 2 hours of very light sleep. You should get a lot more than that. Try to get some sleep now if you can. Did you know it's National Vanya Day? Really? I believe it. We'll have to celebrate later. I'm proud of you for not stealing. Vanya Day. One second, I need to open my drink, so I'm gonna mute myself for a second. Sakona. I like that a lot better. Jawbone crackers is a very good choice. Now, for those of you who are new here, and for the people who don't know, for the entire month of October, we're going to be doing some readings as part of our morning ASMR, our daily morning ASMR. This will be happening every weekday, so Monday through Friday, while on the weekend, the streams will be starting a bit later and have more energetic starts. Saturdays, we'll be working on Scrandal with Vanya, and on Sunday mornings, we'll be doing 7 Days to Die with Dar. But until then, we'll be reading poetry. The week one, the first week of October, is going to be Edgar Allan Poe and the classics. Today I have 3 selections for you. The Raven, The Telltale Heart, and Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Are you ready? Let's get everything in a nice little place. It's time. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more. distinctly I remember. It was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I await the morrow, eagerly I wish the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my book's surcase of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating to some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more. Thank you for the follow. Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating, then no longer. Sir, said I, or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping, tapping at my chamber door. Then I was scarce, was sure I heard you. Here I open wide the door. Darkness here, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Once here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obseisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mine of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my set fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art shorn or craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marvel in this ungainly fowl, to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered. Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. And the bird said, nevermore. Straight at the stillness broken by the reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore. Till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of nevermore, never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, nevermore. Then I sat, engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned in my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloated o'er. She shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim, whose footfalls tingled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, that God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite, and nepenthe from the memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, be that heaven that bends above us by the God we both adore, tell the soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels named Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as token of that lie thy soul hath spoken, leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting, on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the light o'erhim is streaming, throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. I love that one. Always been one of my all-time favorites, The Raven. I hope you enjoyed that one. It's a longer one, a long poem. Takes a bit to read, but still, it's beautiful. I love it so very, very much. No, lovely. I realized I forgot my water. So I'm going to go grab some water real quick. And then we can talk about the poem a little bit. Alright. And I do know that because Edgar Allan Poe was in Baltimore. I'll be right back. Mwah. I need to make sure to turn off the game 1 second. There it is. That's not it. Why is it broken? I've broken it, chat. Oh no. Ah, there we go. Alright, I'll be right back. Mwah. Hello. Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing this morning? Morning, Valerie. Good morning, good morning, good morning. And this is Hallway. You know, I'm trying to keep this morning very... I have to keep muting because it catches me off guard every time I read it. You kinda scared me. I'm sorry to hear that. Morning, Dar. How you doing? Could I get a little shout out for Dar? They don't do ASMR, but they do some very cool streams. This is Hallway. This is Hallway. It just caught me off guard. But yes, I really, really enjoy that poem, The Raven. For those of you who are here for it, it is a very, very good poem. I love the little story with it. Him talking all about his lost love. That was a worrying noise. 1 second, chat. I need to check on something. I think I heard something in the other room. They're in the Wednesday series? Oh, let's check it out. I realized I was muted. So we have 2 options right now. We can either do the tell heart, or we can do because I could not stop for death. Which do you prefer? Another Edgar Allan Poe right away, or a fun little poem by Emily Dickinson? It is also one of my faves. But then again, I am also just a fanboy for Edgar Allan Poe as well. Edgar Allan Poe is the grandfather of the horror story and the fantasy story. Without Edgar Allan Poe, we would have, no fantasy stories at all. It's the way he wrote. But since we just did Edgar Allan Poe, we'll do the shorter one first, because I could not stop for death by Emily Dickinson. Okay. Exactly, exactly. Some of these writers are incredible. Just the way that they wrote these stories. It hadn't been done in that way before, and it's just. We owe so much of our fantasy, of our games, of everything to just a few writers. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school while children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing rain. We passed the setting sun, or rather he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet only tulle. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horse's head, or towards eternity. Short one. It's a nice one. For those of you who have never heard of Emily Dickinson, Emily Dickinson was a writer and poet who didn't like her own writing. In fact, she insisted that people not publish her writing. And it was only at her death that hundreds upon hundreds of her poems were published by her family. Which is a little funny when you imagine specifically telling your family, hey, please don't post my journal anywhere. I don't want anybody to see my writing. I'm like, understood. So we're going to post every single bit of your writing everywhere so everybody gets to read it forever. And I think the modern equivalent would be having somebody post all your fanfics into a book and selling them. Can you imagine? Emily Dickinson wrote from 1830 to 1886. The people need to see my art. Next up, we have The Telltale Heart, which is one of the first stories I ever read by Edgar Allan Poe. Another little bit of trivia. A long, long time ago, well, long for me, not long for a lot of people, there had been little movies made of Edgar Allan Poe's stories, The Pit and the Pendulum being one of them. And Stephen King had seen the movies and thought, wow, these movies would make very good stories. And so he took the movies and adapted them into little short stories that he then sold to his classmates, never realizing that The Pit and the Pendulum and the other Edgar Allan Poe things were also based off short stories. So a short story was turned into a movie that was turned back into a short story. And that is how Stephen King got his start, using that money to fund some of his writing things later on. And he got into a bunch of trouble with his school. All right, you ready? The Telltale Heart. True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease has sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. It was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. With what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it. Oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my hand, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out. And then I thrust in my hand. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole hand within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my hand was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye, and this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring about how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scare scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, within the thick darkness, for the shutters were close fastened through fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on, steadily, steadily. I had my head in and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in the bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quiet, still, and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I have done night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan. I knew it was the groan of mortal terror, not the groan of pain or of grief. Oh no, it was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, was welled up from my own bosom, deepening with dreadful echo. The terrors that distracted me, I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and pitied him. Although I chuckled at heart, I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor. What is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp?" Yes, he has been trying to comfort himself with these suspicions, but he had found all in vain. All in vain. Because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim, and it was the mournful influence of unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. Good luck, honeydew. You got this. You have a good one. Take care of yourself. It'll go well, I promise. And I look forward to seeing you back here. With a little bit less tooth and a little bit more hole. When I had waited a long time very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a single dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot from the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue, with a haze veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damp spot. And now have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over acuteness of the senses? Now I say, there came to my ears a long, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I heard that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am. And now at the dread hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still, but the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leapt into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant I dragged him to the floor. I pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer when I described the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks on the flooring of the chamber, deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I'd been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entreated 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The drink, I said, was my own in a dream. The old I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house, bade them search well. Good night, Keely. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed, in the enthusiasm of my confidence. I brought chairs into the room, and desired them here to rest for their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath where reposed the corpse of my victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My heart. I lost my place. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still they sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definitiveness until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt, I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much as sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officer heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noises steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would it not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men. But the noises steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards. But the noise arose over all and continued increasing, grew louder, 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 and still men chatted pleasantly, and I smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no, they heard. They suspected, they knew. They're making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think, but anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. Could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again, hark, louder, 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 louder. Villains, I shrieked, dissemble no more. I admit the deed, tear up the planks. Here, here, it is the beating of his hideous heart. And there it is. The Raven by Allan Poe. Not the Raven, my bad. The Telltale Heart. I forgot what I was reading. I got so invested there for a little while. I hope you all enjoyed that one. It's a good one. And only now am I realizing, after so long a time, he was having an anxiety or a panic attack. Because for those of you who have had one before, You can occasionally hear a ringing in your ears getting louder and louder. And as you do, you become more and more aware of your own heart beating louder and louder and louder the more you panic. Which, it's interesting, isn't it? All he had to do was stay calm, but he couldn't. Your tetanus is so much fun. Well, technically that's all the stories I prepared for today, but I had realized when I planned out my schedule, I planned an extra day, 2 extra days. So, I may have an extra story or 2 we can grab. Let's see. Which one? Darkness. I think this one will be good. By Byron. Lord Byron. Are you ready? Let me have a drink real quick. Darkness by Lord Byron. I had a dream, which was not all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished, and the stars did wander, darkling in the eternal space. Rayless and pathless the icy earth swung blind and blackening the moonless air. Morn came and went, and came and brought no day, and men forgot their passions in the dread of their desolation, and all their hearts were chilled into selfish prayer for light. And they did live by watchfires and the thrones, the palace of kings, the palace of crowned kings, gods, the habitations of all things which dwell, were burnt for beacons, cities were consumed, and men were gathered round their blazing homes, to look once more into each other's face. Happy were those who dwelt within the eye of the volcanoes and their mountain torch. A fearful hope was all the world contained. Forests were set on fire, but hour by hour they fell and faded, and the cackling trunks extinguished with a crash, and all was black. The brows of men by the sparing light were not earthly aspect as by fits. The flashes fell upon them, some lay down, and hid their eyes and wept, and some did rest, their chins upon the clenched hands, and smiled, and others hurried to and fro and fanned their funeral piles with fuel, and looked up with mad disquietude on the dull sky, the pall of a past world, and then again with curses cast them down upon the dust, and gnashed their teeth, and howled. The wild birds shrieked, and terrified did flutter on the ground, and flapped their useless wings. The wildest brutes came tame and tremulous, and vipers crawled. Welcome home, Pinky. I hope you're able to get some good sleep and twin themselves upon the multitude, hissing but stingless. They were slain for food, and war, which for a moment was no more, did glut himself again. A meal was bought, with blood in each set, sullen apart. Gorging himself in gloom, but no love was left. All earth was but one thought, and that was death. Immediate and inglorious in the pang of famine fed upon all entrails, men died and their bones were tombless as their flesh. The meager by the meager were devoured. The dogs assailed their masters, all save one. He was faithful to a course, and kept the birds and beasts famished men at bay, till hunger clung them, or the dropping dand lured their lank jaws, himself sought out no food. But when piteous and perpetual moan, and a quick desolate cry licked the hand which answered not with a caress, he died. The crowd was famished by degrees, but two of an enormous city did survive, and they were enemies. They met beside the dying embers of an altar place, where they had heaped a mass of holy things, for unholy usage they racked up, and shivering scrapped with their cold skeleton hands the feeble ashes and the feeble birth, blew for a little life and made a flame. It was a mockery. Then they lifted up their eyes as it grew lighter, and beheld each other's aspect. They saw and shirked and died, even for their mutual hideousness. Even of their mutual hideousness they died, unknowing who he was upon whose brow famine had written the fiend. The world was void. The populous and powerful was a lump, seasonless, herbless, treeless, manless, lifeless, a lump of death, a chaos of hard clay. The rivers, lakes, and oceans all stood still. Nothing stirred within their silent depth. Ships, sailorless, lay rotting on the sea, and their masts fell down piecemeal as they dropped. They slept on the abyss without a surge. The waves were dead. The tides were in their grave. The moon, their mistress, had expired before. The wind were withered in the stagnant air, and the clouds perished. Darkness had no need of aid from them. She was the universe. Huh. I've never read that one before. I like it. That's weird. It's creepy, but I like it. A whole world fall into war and famine and everything as it falls apart. I like it a lot. This is gonna be fun. Good morning, Jay. Though I am gonna miss Minecraft. I will be missing Minecraft a lot. But I like these stories. I hope you all enjoy them as much as I do. No, I feel so very, very tired. Like I just need to go to sleep. You missed. Oh. Well, Jay, come here. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear It's nice listening to you read. I hope so. I hope so. And that's why I do this. I read and read a little more. Thank you so much for the follow, Catacomb. Suppose we have time for one more. What do you think? I think we have time for maybe one more short one. El Dorado by Poe. I'm going to drink a little drink real quick. 1 second. All right. One last little poem by Edgar Allan Poe. El Dorado. Gaily bedight, a Calliot knight, in sunshine and in shadow, had journeyed long, singing a song, in search of El Dorado. But he grew old, this knight so bold, and o'er his heart a shadow fell as he found no spot of ground that looked like El Dorado. And as his strength failed him at length, he met a pilgrim shadow. Shadow, said he, where can it be, this land of El Dorado? Over the mountains of the moon, down the valley of the shadows, ride, boldly ride, the shade replied, if you seek for El Dorado. I want to learn more about El Dorado, because we see reference to El Dorado, but I feel like it's a legend. Didn't make it through the generations. No one is as interested in El Dorado. I suppose just because it was a city of gold, and where it was supposed to be, we haven't found anything. But the forest is so dense, we still find people we never knew existed in those forests. And we always will, until we one day burn it all down. Interesting to think about. Now, we'll be reading some more stories tomorrow. Good morning, Arika. Tomorrow, we have a few. Hearing Gene Ring Poem reminds me of back in high school. When I had bits and pieces of The Raven and Telltale Heart memorized, and I still somewhat recall today. Those were kinder days. Technically, we are done with the stories today, but maybe I can do one last one. One last short one. What do you think? Should we see if I can pull in one more? What should I do? What should I do? A dream within a dream. A dream within a dream. Let me see if I can pull it up. A Dream Within a Dream by Edgar Allan Poe. this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow. You are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away, in night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of the golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, while I weep. Oh God, can I grasp them with a tighter clasp? Oh God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? My bad. I just realized one that I forgot. That we can actually throw this one in here. Thank you for the lyric. And this one is long, so I'm going to only read a little bit to start. But we can start with it when we come back. Nanya. Narada. You ready? The Pit and the Pendulum by Edgar Allan Poe. I was sick unto death with that long agony, and when they at length unbound me, I was permitted to sit. I felt that my senses were leaving me. The sentence, the dread sentence of death, was the last of distinct accentuation which reached my ears. After that, the sound of inquisitorial voices emerged into one dreamy, indeterminate hum. It conveyed to my soul the idea of revolution, perhaps from its association and the fancy with the burr of a mill wheel. This only for a brief period, for presently I heard no more. Yet for a while I saw, but without terrible exaggeration, I saw the lips of the black-robed judges. They appeared to me whiter than the sheet upon which I traced these words, and thin, even to grotesqueness, thin with the intensity of their expression of firmness, of immovable resolution, of stern contempt of human torture. I saw the decrees of what to me was fate were still issuing from those lips. I saw them writhe with a deadly locution. I saw them fashion the syllables of my name, and I shuddered, because no sound succeeded. I saw, too, for a few moments of delirious horror, the soft and nearly imperceptible waving of the sable draperies which enwrapped the halls of the apartment. And then my vision fell upon the 7 tall candles upon the table. At first they wore the aspect of charity, and seemed white and slender angels who would save me, but then, all at once, there came a most deadly nausea over my spirit, and I felt every fiber in my frame thrill, as if I had touched the wire of a galvanic battery, while the angel forms became meaningless specters with heads of flame, and I saw from them there would be no help. And then there stole into my fancy, like a rich musical note, the thoughts of what sweet rest there must be in the grave. The thought came gently and stealthily, I seemed long before it attained full appreciation, but just as my spirit came at length properly to feel and entertain it, the figures of the judges vanished, as if magically from before me. The tall candles sank into nothingness. Their flames went out utterly. The blackness of darkness supervened. All sensations appeared swallowed up in a mad rushing descent, as of the soul into Hades, then silence, and stillness, and night, were the universe. And that's where we'll stop for now. I have a few more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. This is a long story. I think it'll definitely be good to start tomorrow with it. But just to give you a little bit of something before I head off for the night, or the day. We have so many selections picked out. So many selections picked out. And my worry is my throat going to be able to keep up with it. I'll have to make sure to drink lots of water. Now, as we go through this month, are there any certain stories you all would like to hear? Any readings or things you would like to have happen this month? There are so many horror games planned, chat. There are so many horror games planned. And we will be doing the punishment wheel once that shot caller arrives. Good morning, Snowy. How you doing? It's gonna be fun celebrating October. You'll think of something. Good. Maybe I should look up some more Edgar Allan Poe facts to be able to read to you all. The only one I have off the top of my head is that when Edgar Allan Poe was found dead was during the vote for women's suffrage. And it had been reported that he'd been gotten very, very drunk and was seen traveling all around the city until eventually he was found dead in the street. So the thought is somebody got him drunk to vote on women's suffrage. And got him so drunk he died. Which is insane to me. I have a feeling things like that happen to more than Edgar Allan Poe, though. You get somebody drunk, you make them vote at a bunch of different places, and then you ditch them so that whatever political thing you want to happen happens. I apologize for the loud noise. Thank you for the hydrate and the stretch. Maybe I should start bringing in my writings. Maybe I should start adding my writings to these as well. But that means I'll have to write some more. Oh, Soul, don't you have work today? I'm a little worried that you might not make it to work. No time of Halloween. Since Halloween, everybody make a scene drinking. You'd like to hear my writing? Should we write horror writing for Halloween? If I have some time, I'll write some horror writing. I've read some of it before, but I don't think anyone here has ever heard my writing. Interesting. Interesting. All right. But since it's horror writing, it might be a bit dark. Can you all handle that? Dark, creepy writing. Don't judge me too hard for it, okay? Alright, Bama. And don't forget, in January we will be doing the National Novel Writing Month that I'm going to be moving to January because the November one is over. Oh, a few more minutes here. Should we see if we can find something to write into? Or do we want one last paragraph? One last paragraph? What do you think? I had swooned, but still will not say that all of consciousness was lost. What of it there remained I will not attempt to define, or even to describe, yet all was not lost in the deepest slumber. No, in delirium. No, in a swoon. No, in death. No. Even in the grave all is not lost, else there is no immortality for man. Arousing from the most profound of slumbers, we broke the gossamer web of some dream. Yet in a second afterward, so frail may that web have been, we remembered not what we have dreamed. In the return to life from the swoon, there are two stages. First, that of a sense of mental or spiritual. Secondly, that of sense, physical existence. It seemed probable that if upon reaching the second stage we could recall the impression of the first, we should find these impressions eloquent in memories of the gulf beyond, and that gulf is what? How at least shall we distinguish its shadow from those of the tomb? But if the impressions of what I have termed the first stage are not at will recalled yet, after a long interval, do they not come unbidden, while we marvel whence they come? So it kind of makes me laugh to see the sentence is, but in the impressions of what I have terrified the first stage, comma, are not, comma, at will, comma, recalled, comma, yet, comma, after long interval, comma, do they not come unbidden, comma, while we marvel whence they came? Holy shit. How does that man put that many sentences together into one? He who has never swooned is not he who finds strange palaces and widely familiar faces in the coals that glow. It is not he who beholds the floating in mid-air, the sad visions that the many may not view. It is not he who ponders over the perfume of some novel flower. It is not he whose brain grows bewildered when the meaning of some musical cadence, which has never been before rested his attention. Amidst frequent and thoughtless endeavors to remember, amidst... Oh, this is the pit and the pendulum. Oh, actually, it's 5:15. Okay, that gives us just enough time to try to find somebody to write out to. So, we'll start there tomorrow. The Pit and the Pendulum, it's a great story. About a man who finds himself... What's up, nap time? What's your suggestion? You're fine, dwarf. I'm ready. Are they an ASMR artist, or are they soft? Because I do have a... Are they? Let's check them out. Give me a second while I watch, because right now I cannot, as there's an advertisement, which is the most annoying thing. Why am I getting a very loud advertisement when I'm trying to take a look at this man? Mm-hmm. Hmm. So it looks like they're doing karaoke in an interview. I do worry that I don't want to make them feel bad if I raid in with ASMR, so we'll find somebody else for today. They are very quiet, but if they are doing loud singing, that is my one worry. Hmm. Oh, what is Pissfish up to? Oh, they're doing ASMR gaming. Yes. Alright, you're gonna go check out the lovely, lovely jellyfish. We're just gonna do a little EP raid, okay? There you go. Copy the raid message. Go say hi to Saura. Be kind. Be sweet. And I'll see you all later, okay? We'll be back here tonight with a bunch of fun little horror games. I will see you all next time. Goodbye.